Do Fireflies Go to School? By Katie Moon. Usually I love fireflies, not tonight, though. Usually, when I see the world light up around me with tiny suns, it means the next chapter of Today fun is beginning. For 2 months, it meant grabbing that old jar Dad gave me and stuffing my toes into my already tied sneakers. Mom hates when I do that. She says I'm going to ruin my shoes and that I already grow out of my shoes too fast as it is. But I still do it because I know she'll still laugh as I run out the door, swinging and grabbing at every firefly in sight. Most bugs are hard to catch, but not fireflies. It's like they're in on the game, wanting to give me a chance to catch them. They don't get scared away either, even when they see a giant hand flying up to capture them. Still, they wait there for me. By the end of the night, my jar looks like a little Christmas tree minus the tree part. Just a bunch of twinkling lights floating around, waiting patiently until, as the last sign of real sunlight disappears, I unscrew the punctured cap and watch them disappear back into the night. They don't mind, though. For 2 whole months, they've always come again to play the next day. Not tonight, though. Tonight, the fireflies coming out is like an alarm bell going off, telling everyone who sees them that another day is ending soon, and tomorrow is almost here. And today's tomorrow is the worst tomorrow there is, because today is summer but tomorrow is school. I tried to hurry outside without Mom or Dad seeing and wave the fireflies away. I begged them to please, please, please not come to play tonight. If Mom sees them, she's going to know that the day is almost over, which means going to sleep, which means waking up, which means going to school, which means saying goodbye to summer. For a whole school year, that means no summer until I'm 7, and I just barely turned 6. Maybe if I can get the fireflies to hide for tonight, I can figure out another way for us to play tomorrow without Mom and Dad seeing. Normally, I like that the fireflies just hang in the air, not running away. Tonight I'm annoyed, though. No matter how much I try to shoo them away, they just float there, waiting to be caught. And now it's too late, because Mom is calling me back inside. She says I can't catch fireflies tonight because I need to go to bed early. I tried to ask her for just 5 more minutes, but she said I already got 5 more minutes. Even when I asked for just 1 more minute, she says no. Upstairs, I try to do everything as slowly as possible. I don't really like brushing my teeth, but tonight I brush each tooth an extra 2 times to make sure it's clean. I don't really like washing my hair, but tonight I make sure to scrub every hair on my head until it stings a little. Mom says I'm dragging my feet, so she stays to make sure I get everything else done more quickly. My stomach is starting to not feel so good now. It feels a little bit like when I ate too much cake at Alex's party. It was chocolate cake, my favorite, so I took the biggest piece Alex's mom cut. It had been the best cake in the whole wide world, with so much chocolate icing and even crushed chocolate cookies sprinkled on the whole thing. After everyone had gone back to playing, I snuck back to the leftover cake to have another piece, and then another one. My belly felt ready to explode that day, so Dad drove me home and talked about listening to my body when it tells me I've had enough. My stomach still had a little case of the gurgles by the time the sun said goodbye that night. So Dad carried me on his back while I grabbed little fireflies from the air. When I looked up at the red and purple sky, I pretended I had my own wings like my fireflies, closing my eyes so tight they hurt. I asked Dad if I was glowing. He laughed his big laugh and said he saw my glow every time I smiled. Well, Dad, unlike with that chocolate cake, I'm listening to my body now. It sounds to me like it's saying that I've had enough school and not enough summer. Maybe if I just get a little more summer, my stomach will feel better. I might need to stay home for a few more weeks or months. Mom doesn't agree, though. She says I'm just feeling nervous, but it'll be better once I've made friends in my new class and met my new teacher. As Dad tucks my pink blanket in around me, I can see little dots of light flashing outside my window, the fireflies. They're still waiting for me. Every single night, when the sun dropped behind the tall trees in our backyard, they've appeared, one by one, ready for me. I wonder where they go during the day. Are they sleeping in the trees? Maybe they sleep in that big dark hole in the oak tree. Brandon dared me one time to climb up the branches and stick my hand in. Suddenly that tree seemed as tall as a mountain, but I didn't tell Brandon that because big brothers make fun of you when you're scared. I had been halfway up the trunk when I felt a cracking underneath my feet. A lot of crying and one fast car ride later, I had 14 new stitches in my knee. Brandon held my hand the whole time. When we got home, he even helped me climb down from the car. That night, when the little specks of light appeared in the bushes, he held the jar for me as I limped around after my shining friends. Dad is reading my favorite book tonight, but something's wrong. Is he reading faster than usual? It doesn't sound like it, but then how are they already to Foxy Loxy's cave? I stare at the illustration of a little chicken and duck peeking inside a black cave as a red fox grins behind them. The cave looks so dark in the book, like a big, scary mouth waiting to swallow them up. It's a good thing that chicken decides to run away. I wouldn't want to go in there, either. That's why I sleep with a Little Mermaid nightlight by my bed. Darkness means I can't see Mom or Dad or my teddy bear or even my own hand. Brandon told me that darkness lets monsters that are usually trapped in shadows go wherever they want to eat little sisters. Mom said monsters aren't real, but one almost got me once. One night as I sat among the fireflies, I found a bright green rock I had never seen before. It felt smooth like water and looked like the pictures I've seen of the ocean. I wondered if maybe it actually was from the ocean and imagined what fun stories it had to tell me about living in the underwater world. I got so caught up in dreams of mermaids and pirates that I didn't notice the fireflies say goodbye or the sun going to sleep behind the trees. When I looked up, all the green leaves had turned black, and all the bushes around me had combined to make one big, dark wall. The blanket of dark lawn between the back door and me felt like a whole football field. I was alone, and darkness was inviting out the night monsters. Would the shadow monsters eat me before I can get to the door? Just as I jumped to my feet to run inside, leaves nearby rustled softly. Monsters. Tears were threatening to fall down my cheeks, and my voice cracked as I yelled for Dad. I had dropped to my knees and hugged them close when the dark was chased away by a bright light in front of my face. Right in front of my face, blinking slowly bright yellow, hung one of my wonderful fireflies. It must have heard me crying because it stood like a knight in one of Brandon's books, guarding me from any shadow monsters waiting in the dark. Finally, with a shuffle of branches, Dad pushed aside the bushes where I hid and scooped me up. As he carried me to the safety of the kitchen lights, I waved one last goodbye to the firefly who had protected me. Dad closes the book and says it's time to sleep. I asked Dad to read another story since that one went way too fast, but that doesn't work. As he gives me a kiss on the forehead, I look back at the flashing lights outside my window. Tonight is the first night all summer that I haven't stayed to play with them. They'll be wondering where I've gone. Do fireflies go to school? I bet they don't even know what school is. They might not know that tomorrow is different. They might keep coming back, waiting for me to come play, but I won't be there. Each night, they'll keep coming, and I'll still be missing, until one day maybe they don't come. And one by one, they all disappear, and maybe I'll become just a memory for them, until even that goes away. I thought Dad was going to turn off the lights, but instead I feel his warm, rough hand wrap around mine. He brushes my hair off my forehead softly and asks why I'm crying. I feel my chest start to shake up and down faster and faster as loud sniffles slip out my nose. I ask Dad if the fireflies forget their friends when summer ends. Dad is quiet for a moment as he continues to stroke my hair. Then he asks me something funny. Do I think my mouth forgets my hand when it's not eating? What does that mean? Mouths don't have memories, do they? Maybe they do. Maybe that's why mine is always asking for ice cream. Dad laughs at that. Then he takes my hand, looking so little in between his, and holds it up for me to see. Without my hand, he says, my mouth would never be fed. Every day, every bite, my mouth trusts my hand to return when it needs food. And, he says, without the mouth feeding my body each day, my hand would become tired and weak. They work together, forever partners, and even when the mouth is finished eating each meal, still the hand will come when it's called. Together, along with every other part of my body, they make one whole beautiful me. Dad says that's the truth of the entire universe. Everything tied together, like a beautiful spider web. I never thought that spider webs could be beautiful. But he says this one is. He says with every memory I've made with my fireflies, with every touch of their little legs in my hands, they've become a part of me, and me a part of them. Even when I'm not here, my little fireflies carry me with them. I ask Dad if the fireflies will come every night to see me for the rest of my life. Maybe I could show them what it looks like when the leaves turn orange and red and fall like snowflakes to the ground. Or I could even show them how real snowflakes turn to blankets of snow over the grass. And maybe they could stay forever with me. Squeezing my hand softly, Dad shakes his head. He says there will be days where it's cold and dark, and even when I look for them, I won't see those glowing lights out my window. He says every person I meet will have days where they can't see the fireflies. On those days, he says, I should remember them in my head and feel them in my heart, and there I will find them again. As Dad closes the door to my room after a kiss goodnight and whispered goodbye, I look out the window as the last of the glittering dots disappear. My eyes feel scratchy and heavy now. I guess there was no fighting off tomorrow forever. Right before I let sleep take me, I put my hand on my chest and feel the gentle thud of my heart, and I promise my fireflies to take them with me wherever I go. My hands feel sweaty, but somehow my fingertips still feel cold. My shoes smack loudly against the tile floor as I follow behind Mom's long legs. I hear shouts and laughter from each door we pass as other kids see old friends and greet soon-to-be new ones. Outside each door, a teacher smiles and waits, waving in other girls and boys who hide behind their parents. Mom says first grade will be so much fun for me. She says each class has its own special name for the school year. She points to each door as we pass. A bright poster hangs on each one, decorated with cartoon pictures of that class's theme and a message from the teacher. Welcome Ladybug class. Come find your spots. Hello Bumblebee class. I'm buzzing with excitement to meet you. Come on in Grasshopper class. Time to hop into fun. Mom gives my hand a tight squeeze as we stop in front of the last doorway. She says this is my class. With a deep breath, I look up at the door that seems to tower over me. And I gasp. I press my hand to my heart. And for a second I'm certain I can feel it glowing. Welcome Firefly class. I'm delighted to meet you. Fluffy's Home by Teresa Brown. On the way to school, Bobby was slowly walking on the side of the dirt road and heard an unusual sound coming from the ditch. He stopped, just for a moment, to be sure he was not imagining the sound. It got quiet and so he kept on walking. He had fun in school that day, but his mind was on that noise he heard earlier in the day. The bell rang. He said goodbye to his friends and started the trek back home. Bobby started walking slowly when he got near the spot where he heard the noise before and decided to try and find out what was making it. With a swallow of air, he stepped down the embankment and searched the area. Lo and behold, he found the cutest, yet scruffiest little tyke of a dog tucked among the tall grasses. With satisfaction from taking courage to see what the noise was and finding the puppy, he grinned from ear to ear and decided to take it home. Bobby washed him and brushed him and made a bed for him. Then he thought of giving him a name. Scruffy came to mind first, then Mikey, but looking at him and his fur, he agreed Fluffy was the perfect fit. Every day they would walk to school and back, and on the weekend, hang out at the pond. Finally, Fluffy had a home to call his own and Bobby had a new friend. One day it rained heavily and thundered so loud that it frightened Fluffy. This was his first real bad storm. He ran down the road in search of where he remembered he was first found looking for solace. Bobby was away for the weekend because he was invited to a sleepover. Fluffy hid among the tall grass, not knowing where his master was, and whined all night. It was rough for him. Bobby, unaware of the situation, was enjoying making Lego block houses because they could not go outside due to the storm. After a while they just chilled and had popcorn and watched movies. Bobby thought of how Fluffy was getting along but soon focused on playing cards after breakfast. Fluffy got hungry and so wandered into the woods in search of something to eat. Needless to say, now he was lost. Bobby came back home and was excited to see Fluffy, but he was nowhere to be found. He searched all around the house, under the house, thinking about the storm, hoping he was there, but no Fluffy. Bobby called his friends and they came right over and started searching with him. They looked high and low. They went to the schoolyard, thinking maybe Fluffy went there to look for Bobby. No Fluffy. With saddened hearts and dejected faces because they all loved Fluffy, they tried to think of where he could be as they sat on the school stoop. Bobby then said, "Let's try the woods." The boys agreed and went and brought a whistle and some flashlights and a leash. Off they went to look for Fluffy in the woods. Meanwhile, Fluffy was really having a time being out in the woods alone. He missed Bobby, their walks, and the kids at school. Still, he managed to catch a fish or two, though. Soon the boys were scouring the woods for Fluffy, calling his name and using the whistle. When it was getting later, they turned on the flashlights and kept on searching. Then one of Bobby's friend yelled, "I see him, I see him." They all rushed over and sure enough, there was that cutest, scruffiest little tyke of a pup, Fluffy, laying next to the stream. Bobby ran and fell down beside him, hugged him tightly and told him how worried he was and how glad he was to see him. Fluffy wiggled with joy, wagging his tail profusely, too. All the boys shouted for joy, knowing Fluffy was okay and happy they found him. They traveled back to Bobby's house and all ate a hearty dinner and sat back on the porch looking at the night sky and agreed that all future sleepovers would be at Bobby's, especially if it was going to rain that weekend, so as to keep Fluffy company and from running away and getting lost. Bobby and Fluffy were inseparable after that. Wherever you saw Bobby, you saw Fluffy and vice versa. Fluffy had found a home and was home. Bobby was very happy and Fluffy was content. Once in a while, Bobby would think about the time Fluffy was lost and he could tell it came across Fluffy's mind too. His whining in his sleep, so he would comfort him and let him know it is okay. Bobby went off to college and yes, he took Fluffy. They lived across from the university, so Fluffy would be able to watch from the living room window and they can see each other when Bobby changed classes. Also, when the weather gets bad, Bobby can go and check on Fluffy to keep him calm and make sure he is okay. Bobby finished his courses and took some time to travel the world, with Fluffy at his side. They explored all of the nooks and crannies of the world. One day, before Bobby went to work, he noticed a storm was brewing and wondered if he should go in. Looking at Fluffy, he saw a different dog, one confident and seemingly okay with the weather change. Bobby could not believe how much Fluffy had grown. He was more secure in himself now, and that made him smile. He patted Fluffy on the head and locked the door and headed to work. The storm came, the storm passed. When Bobby got home, there was Fluffy waiting for him. Both were happy to see each other and had a wonderful evening by the fireplace. Yes, Fluffy had found a friend and a home. Fluffy was home. The duck stops here. Ben Kirkby. I was driving my small truck full of storage pick UPS along the quiet country road on my usual weekly run. I owned a warehouse out beyond the forest that people would pay to discreetly store things. Often it was odd stuff that they wanted kept hidden and incognito, with some of it being very peculiar or even spooky. Is this thing a part of an alien ship? I might often speculate at an item. Is this some ancient, cursed tribal totem? Does this locked chest contain the ghost of a pirate? But it wasn't my place to ask questions. People paid me to keep this stuff secret and where no one would find it. And out here in the middle of nowhere was perfect. Today's delivery was a fairly unassuming one compared to some of the stuff I'd previously transported. The back of my truck was full of mannequins all dressed in suits of armor. These might be priceless pieces from the Middle Ages that someone wants hidden until they can find a buyer, perhaps. I thought. It was often a fun way to pass the time on these trips, imagining what the stories were that went with these objects. Suddenly, upon coming over a small hill, I found the road ahead blocked as I got to the bottom of the slope. In the middle of the road there stood a duck. It just stood there, unmoving, and completely unfazed by my moving vehicle. It wasn't going to get out of the way. Braking, I pulled up. I didn't want to run it over. I'd always liked ducks, and I found the creature's bravery admirable, or its stupidity amusing. Despite my having stopped, the duck refused to budge. I honked my horn, but it still wasn't going anywhere. It just stared at me defiantly. I switched off the engine and got out of my truck. Walking around to the front, I first just stared down at the duck, hands on hips with a humored look, wondering how I might coax it off of the road. Knowing I was just thinking out loud, I said, "Look, little fella, do you mind? I've kind of got to pass." How silly, I thought to myself. As if trying to reason with the duck will do anything. "No, you shall not pass," snapped the duck. "Not you nor anyone else." My eyes went wide with shock. The duck just spoke. Am I going mad? I thought to myself. Okay. I finally said in a tentative voice. "So, why are you not letting anyone pass, Mr. Duck?" "Excuse me, my name is not Mr. Duck," he responded, still snappy. "And it really annoys me how you humans always jump to that assumption. You wouldn't expect me to call you Mr. Human, now would you?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I said meekly. "What should I call you then?" "My name is Wellington." "Okay, so why are you blocking the road then, Wellington?" "Because I'm trying to have the river rerouted this way, human," he said. "But I can't do that with this road being here and still in use. So long as people keep thinking that they can come this way, my works won't get completed, so I must make it a point to stand here and say no more." The duck stops here. I grinned with disbelief. "You do realize that what you're doing is going to upset a lot of people, right?" I replied. "That may be so, but I see no alternative." said Wellington. To what? I asked. Why is it so important to reroute the river? Because human. At present the river runs past the old Queen Victoria house, and everyone who's ever gone near that place knows that it is haunted. My family and I live along that river and we travel up and down it every day. Every time we come to the bend that old house overlooks, our day is ruined right there and then by the ghostly screaming that makes us fear for our lives. My wife and I are not taking our ducklings past there anymore. I scratched my head now as I thought about the Wellington's troubles. As much as I sympathized with him, it would be very problematic for me to have this road replaced by a river, and besides, surely such an undertaking would be impossible for one duck. Look, Wellington, surely it's a bit impractical for you to divert the course of a river, I stated. What if I were to help you do something about the house? If it weren't there to cause you trouble anymore, then surely you wouldn't need to reroute the river, right? Wellington was silent for a moment, looking thoughtful. I thank you for the offer, and yes, you do make a good point. Unfortunately, I don't think simply demolishing the house would be a good idea. Whatever its reason, the ghost that haunts the place is already very agitated, and I dare not think about what it might do should its house be destroyed. I'm not saying we should demolish the house, not yet anyway, I replied. I suggest we do something about the ghost itself. Wellington looked perplexed. And how would you propose we do that? I deal a lot in spooky stuff like this, I answered confidently. Let's just say my work has taught me a bit that might be handy in this situation. I arrived and parked just short of the Queen Victoria house's 1-kilometer-long driveway. Even from this distance, the intermittent screaming could still be heard, which gave me an unnerving feeling even before I'd started. Finally, I set off toward the house on foot. The closer I got, the more I felt my muscles stiffening and the hair on the back of my neck raising. As I came to the front door, the screams now louder, I discovered a large padlock on it and a sign that read, "Dare ye not enter lest your screams join those doth can be heard coming from within these here halls." How old-timey, I thought. So that's ghosts speak for no soliciting, almost sound like a pirate wrote it or something. Fortunately, I'd come prepared for a locked door. I took the bowl cutters I'd brought and, after straining to cut it for a while, I eventually got the lock to come off. I flung the doors open and entered. Almost immediately another scream rang out, after one of a number of silent intervals. Only having one foot in the door, the muscles of my other leg had locked tight, preventing me from moving. Eventually, as the noise again subsided, I stepped fully inside. Then there was another scream, which seemed to come from the northern end of the house. This meant going left, so I began tentatively tiptoeing that way. I tried to move in a way that seemed determined rather than terrified. As I moved through the dark and dusty old rooms of the house, I noticed as I shone my torch into the corners of each of the rooms that the whole building was crawling with bugs. Aside from this, the rooms themselves were surprisingly empty, and all of them seemed to be an eerily similar shape. It almost felt as though I was walking through the same room over and over again. With the next scream, it now sounded like the ghost was behind me and over on the west side of the house. After reaching the rough area of it, I decided to head up a floor, thinking it to be above me. With the staircase leading into the room on the opposite end of the house to where I was looking to be, I had to loop back around. I then came to the estimated spot. My goosebumps were like hedgehog spikes at this point. I trembled in anticipation of the next scream, expecting it to come from right in front of me, but there was nothing. The room felt colder than the others, but it was silent. Eventually, I forced my shaking hands to move the torch about the corners of the ceiling. The first one was completely bare, not even any of the multitude of bugs that had been in the other rooms. The next corner was the same. Then, as I was running my beam across to the next corner, it passed something in the blink of an eye. My immediate reaction was to flick the beam back. And then, in that moment, what looked like a mix between a cloud of dust and a silk curtain in the vague shape of a figure became caught in the beam, unmoving. My muscles all clenched tight. It made a sound, but this was not a scream but a sad whimpering wail. "It's okay, I just wanted to talk to you," I said, stepping forward. "Can you understand me?" The entity only moaned in response. Not being at all intelligible, it then appeared to wave its arms in a gesturing motion toward one corner of the room. Turning my torch in that direction, I noticed something small and reflective. Forcing my legs to move again, I went over and picked it up, discovering it to be a Zippo lighter. "Oh, thank goodness." Then came a voice from the figure's direction. Shocked, I lurched back in its direction. "Who's that?" I said in a panic. "Finally, someone's actually touching it and I can talk to them," said the being. "You have no idea how frustrating it's been all this time." "What's going on?" I asked, only just realizing that touching the lighter allowed me to understand the ghost. "I'm so glad someone actually had the nerve to try and seek me out and not go running in terror for once," said the ghost. "Trying to get someone's attention enough so that they'd come in here and find that lighter hasn't been easy. All my attempts have seemed to just make the situation worse." "Well, you've made contact now," I said. "What is it you want?" "I'm bored," said the ghost. "I want to leave this place and be free, but I didn't feel comfortable leaving that lighter here. It's my attachment to the physical world, my only way of communicating with anyone. I wanted someone to find it who'd be willing to hold on to it for me and keep it secret. Someone I can count on." Suddenly a thought came to mind. "I might well be the perfect contact for you," I said. "See, I'm kind of in the business of keeping secrets and discreetly holding onto items for people. I own a property hidden away out here away from poking noses." "My goodness, you're a lifesaver, metaphorically speaking," said the ghost. "But why are you being so generous? I hadn't even gotten to trying to bargain with you yet. Let's just say that you continuing to haunt this house is troubling for some people, and I need to solve that problem for them so they don't create more problems for me," I answered. "Then we have a deal," said the ghost. "Just be sure to keep that lighter safe, and if you ever need to speak with me, just light it." "Thanks, will do," I answered. With that, the ghost vanished. "Well, that was easier than expected," I said to myself. On my way home, I drove back along the road where I'd previously been stopped by the duck coming from the opposite direction. I could see that he was still there guarding his post. Pulling over, I got out of the vehicle once again. "Hello again, Wellington," I said. "Your problem is solved. The Queen Victoria house has been haunted, and the ghost has left on good terms." He gave a small but exuberant jump on the spot. "Oh, well, my sincerest thanks to you, human," he said. "Apologies for any rudeness or inconvenience I've caused you. You've done me and many others a tremendous service, especially now that I'll not be needing to reroute the river. I will return to my family now, but before I go, I'll give you my promise to make it know that you are a friend to all the wildlife in this region." With that, Wellington flew off toward the forest.